Islam, you are a political man yourself through and through, and you have chosen, I think, probably the most interesting of the many interviews in today's papers as either side comes out. That's with the Prime Minister, with Simon Walters in the Mail on Sunday.
Indeed, but we're still on the subject of big, bruising fights, aren't we? Because what's interesting about Simon Walters' piece, his interview with the Prime Minister, he does come out fighting, but it always just bringing it back to Boris Johnson. In all of his arguments seem to come back to quoting him about his Nike swoosh argument about the economy, to his other arguments, and I think that's what's quite interesting. They say they're trying to avoid blue on blue. It seems to be sort of percolate through the whole of this interview. Another interview with the Chancellor, George Osborne. Again, the same sorts of messages around the economy. Perhaps the most interesting line is that he says it's a battle for the soul of the country. I'm fairly sure Suzanne and those on the Leave side agree. And Michael Gove has been interviewed too, making the issue about the economy. I think this is quite interesting because he said in an interview that we did earlier this week, he said, you know, expert opinion, people's fed up with expert opinion. So this one's quite interesting. David Smith, the economics editor of the Sunday Times, talking about the single market, leaving the single market and risking a world of pain. Prime Minister's argument is going to be focused on the single market, perhaps as much as the EU in the 18 days to come.
And very interesting, you gave Michael Gove a pretty hard time on the economic side of the argument, the single market, but when I spoke to him, he could give a very crisp answer about the single market. I said, will we be in it or out of it? And he said, no, we'll be out of it. So that's very interesting to hear what Boris Johnson says later on. Of those two interviews, which have been both spectacular, if I may say so, which was the hardest, and did you change your mind about either of them? You've written a piece, I think, in The Observer about this.
They were both very, very difficult. They're both superb debaters. Perhaps Mr Gove had an advantage in coming second and seeing the approach that we took, which was perhaps atypical. But we felt it was an important moment for the country, and you need to be as robust in shaking the tree and see what comes out of that when you shake the tree, you know, rather aggressively, and see what comes out. And we got new information out of both of them, so we're happy with that, and we're looking forward to the rest of the TV specials on other channels.
Lots more to come.
Exactly.
Lots more to come. All right, then, Suzanne Evans, you've taken the Gove and Boris letter to the Prime Minister. They write a lot of letters, these guys, don't they?
Well, this is a very important letter, and actually the headline's slightly misleading because it's also been signed by Gisela Stewart, who, of course, is a Labour MP. It's very much trying to put the Cameron on the back foot, really. He's been making all these threats about the economy, but, of course, the point that we need to make from the Vote Leave perspective is that our membership of the European Union actually leaves Britain dangerously and permanently exposed to being forced over to hand more and more money to Brussels as they put more and more laws over us. And this is the fundamental crux of the matter. And what's important about this letter, I think, is it's Vote Leave taking the initiative on the economy, which is great because it's showing just how serious the crisis in the Eurozone is at the moment. And even though we're not in the Euro, that is absolutely hitting us, or will hit us very hard. It's hit us hard already. We've got £9 billion worth of loans outstanding and bailouts previously. And this is not going to stop. If you look at Greece is expected to miss its July payment. Italy's debt is racking up at a rate of pace.
So the point is that we haven't got a choice on the ballot of business as usual. Each vote takes us into unknown territory.
Absolutely.
Really.
It's not a vote for the status quo. Remain cannot tell us what staying in looks like. And on the economy, I think it's actually very, very dangerous, because I think if we vote to remain, that will be a green light to Brussels to say, right, that's it. Britain wants to stay in, full steam ahead on anything we like.
You very clearly used the word green, which allows me to bring in Caroline Lucas at that point.
What a segue.
Caroline,
Thank goodness you did, otherwise I'd probably just be sitting here.
Another Gove and Johnson interview there.
Yes, this is a piece where Gove and Johnson really do take misinformation to a new art form, really. They are trying to persuade us that they are going to be the champions for progressive politics. And they really are taking us for fools, I think. They're basically saying that leaving the EU would liberate them to invest in public services. Now, of course, we've really seen this government and the Tory government, you know, trying to invest in public services, haven't we? Not. You know, so this is just them trying to pretend that Brexit is the only way to realise a dream of a one-nation Britain, whereas in actual fact, we know that they are not interested in that. And essentially, you've got, you know, them complaining about the EU being all about corporate giants, bankers, undeserving rich. Yeah. You know, the idea that these people care about this is exactly the agenda that they've been pursuing in government. It really does stink of the most extraordinary hypocrisy.
It's rather weird. Is this campaign beginning to morph into an alternative government on offer? We've got almost something like a pledge card now from the Leave side.
We have. We've got five important principles.
But before we get onto that, let me just say that I wanted to pick up actually a rather wonderful piece in your article today, Faisal, where you have this lovely expression that we're now talking about post-truth politics, the elevation of strategic political lying to an art form. And I'm afraid that it's exactly what is happening with this bus that is going around, £350 million.
I should say.
Yes, but I think in particular that bus with the £350 million, which we know is an untruth. It is a lie.
What, like the one that every family is going to be £4,300.
That's a projection, and there are projections on both sides. That one is a complete lie.
All right.
Faisal, we cannot control. That's the point. It's about control, Caroline.
It's about lying, Suzanne.
It's about control, Caroline, of the money that British people put into the economy.
They don't put 350 million into the economy.
Enough already. Ladies, please.
So it's not just about the Conservatives, though, is it, Andrew? Actually, the arguments we've heard, they're going to remain the same for the next 18 days. It's where the Labour voters that will unlock this referendum, technically, in terms of the sheer numbers.
There's a very interesting poll in the Observer just underneath your piece, which shows sort of statistically all the big groups of Leave and Remain voters, and the group most likely to vote for Remain is in fact Labour voters.
Yes, if they turn out. And we know the unions have decided now to put in nearly £2 million as 60 people, Labour canvassers working in their HQ for the Labour In campaign, trying to turn them out. And now you have here Jeremy Corbyn, but perhaps John McDonnell's quote's the most interesting. He's saying that the establishment, the Conservative establishment, should step back, that this blue-on-blue framing of the referendum is very bad for Remain, and people like him should step up and he can make the case, the progressive case that Caroline was talking about. As well,
that we could also have some women making the case. I mean, you know, I'm really grateful that the Remain campaign is going to be putting up 3 women later this week to take on Boris, and I think that's a very wise idea. But honestly, if you just look at the papers around us, this is a debate dominated by men,
I think
and
on
it's
your
also
side,
dominated by the same
ours.
arguments, absolutely by yours.
No, it's not. Andrea Less and Priti Patel have been there right at the forefront.
It's a substantive point, because I think as well, as Faisal's saying, you've got the economy on one side, immigration on the other, but there are a million other arguments out there that aren't even getting any airspace at all. For example, the environment, the fact that we know that environmental problems by their very definition are cross-boundary, they don't queue up politely at borders.
And you've got a Times story, I think, about air pollution.
Well, exactly, and air pollution is a perfect example of where you need EU laws in order to be able to try to reduce it. This is the story of a mother who believes that air pollution contributed to her daughter's fatal asthma attack, and she's preparing to sue the Mayor of London as a result. This is an incredibly sad story, but it's also the fact 40,000 people dying prematurely as a result of air pollution. If they were dying as a result of gun crime, we would see some commensurate action. The fact that it's an environmental problem, actually it's not an environmental problem. It's a problem of inequality. It's a problem of the fact that people who are in some of the poorest areas of our country, the people from ethnic minorities in particular, are the ones who are in the front line of this. So this is basically a story, I think, not just about environment, but about inequality, but also pointing to the fact, as you say, that we need EU laws.
The London Mayor is what she's saying. So how is that an EU problem? Why isn't she seeing the EU if it's supposed to be the EU's?
There's actually a parallel case. There is a parallel case that Client Earth is taking against the government and the EU.
This is an international
Let's keep moving on.
Air pollution, the environment is an international problem, not just an EU problem.
All right. You've got another story there, because I want to keep rushing through the stories. EU tax plot.
One of the things I think is really good about this referendum is this is in the Sun, is that we are seeing now some of the issues that come up at an EU level that just pass under the radar and go unnoticed and pass into legislation without anybody noticing. The referendum is actually bringing some of these to the fore. And this is the latest EU tax initiative, which is meaning that we will all be given a new personal European taxpayer ID number. And the Sun says the plan's been drawn up by the Euro Commission, and it's already been rubber-stamped by the EU Parliament's Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee. So this is the kind of thing I was talking about earlier. It's not the status quo. They're going to take control of tax. It'll be wages. It'll be benefits. What we have coming down the track,
we have votes on all of that, Suzanne. But we have votes on all of that, and this is also going to set up. Can I just say, they also plan to set up a register of all assets held by individuals and companies. We've been trying to crack down on tax evasion and avoidance. The EU is helping us do it.
Let us leap elegantly to social media. Faisal, you've got a very interesting story there about Damien McBride, I think.
Yes. My colleague Neil Patterson spotted a tweet that appeared to be a direct message. Occasionally, one can slip fingers on one's iPhone and make this mistake. This appeared last night from Damien McBride, who is, of course, the ex-advisor to Gordon Brown and the current advisor to the Shadow Defence Secretary, Emily Thornberry.
So big in the Labour family.
Big in the Labour family.
And here he is apparently helping vote Leave.
Very good, by the way. I'll email you another VAT-related idea this evening, just in case there's a day or interview where MG is looking for a new line. Who could MG be?
Apart from Michael Gove. Apart from Michael Gove.
Well, who knows?
But we have to say that according to the
Faisal.
Politics Home website, Dame Bride is saying it's just a personal friendship thing. He's not on the other side. It's been misunderstood and mistaken. So there you go.
But MG
happens all the time on social
Could be a
media.
car.
We must